Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into the collapse of Iran. And let me tell you, the story isn't what you might think. When most people think about the fall of Iran, they point to the wars in 2025 and 2026. It makes sense, right? It's the simple answer. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the country was already a ghost long before the first shot was ever fired? In fact, many experts would tell you that Iran was essentially a hollow shell, just waiting for a push. And here's the real head-scratcher. This was a nation with the fourth largest oil reserves in the entire world, yet it was on a collision course with total failure. How does that even happen? So today, that's what we're going to unpack. We're going to look at the three pillars of this internal collapse to really understand what happened and to see how a country so rich in resources could end up so catastrophically poor.
Okay, so let's start by following the money. Or to be more accurate, let's look at where all the money was being trapped, because it sure wasn't making its way to the rest of the country.
At the very heart of Iran's economy wasn't a free market. It was the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC. Now, you have to understand, this was way more than just an army. Think of it like a giant megacorporation that also happened to have tanks and missiles. They had a stranglehold on everything that mattered.
And just how dominant were they? Well, get this. Companies tied to the Guard were just handed more than 5,000 national megaprojects. No bidding, no competition, nothing. That means all the money for the country's biggest jobs, oil, construction, you name it, was funneled directly to the military elite. And it wasn't just the IRGC. You also had these so-called charitable foundations, or bonyads. But charitable is a bit of a stretch. Just one of these foundations, controlled directly by the supreme leader, was sitting on $95 billion in assets. And the real kicker? It was all completely tax-free. Just incredible. This chart right here, this really tells the whole story. A mind-blowing 90% of all bank loans in the country went to the politically connected top 1%. Imagine trying to start a business or grow your farm. Good luck. The real engines of the economy were completely starved of cash.
So the money was captured, but this rot wasn't just financial. It was physical. It literally started poisoning the land the country needed to survive.
The regime had this big ideological goal of food self-sufficiency. It sounds noble, let's grow all our own food so we don't have to rely on anyone. The problem is, Iran is a very dry country. Trying to turn a desert into a breadbasket was basically a recipe for ecological suicide. And guess who got the contracts to build these giant dams and irrigation projects? Yep, those same IRGC-linked companies. They built dams against all scientific advice. One infamous dam turned a major river into saltwater, killing 400,000 date palm trees. Reckless water pumping caused the ground in major cities to literally sink, and huge lakes just vanished. I mean, it got so bad that in 2025, even Iran's own president had to admit it. He warned that Tehran, the capital city, might have to be abandoned because it was running out of water. The country was becoming unlivable. So let's recap. The economy has been captured, and the land itself is dying. What happens next? Well, your most valuable asset starts to leave. And I'm not talking about oil, I'm talking about people.
And this number is just staggering. 12,000 university professors fled Iran. Think about that for a second. These are the people educating the next generation of doctors, engineers, and scientists. The country's brain drain had turned into a full-blown brain hemorrhage. And for those who stayed, the situation was just bleak. Iran's labor participation rate was only 41%. To put that in perspective, a country like South Korea is up around 64%. This means more than half of Iran's working-age population was just not working. Either they couldn't find a job or they'd given up all hope. So you have massive inflation, no jobs, and this is the tragic result. By the end of 2025, and remember, this is before the major war, over 80% of Iranians had fallen into absolute poverty in a country that is literally floating on oil. And it wasn't just people leaving, it was money. According to Iran's own central bank, almost $100 billion in capital officially left the country. And if that's the official number, the real amount that was smuggled out was way, way higher. So you see the picture, right? By the time the war started, there was almost nothing left. The economy was hollow, the land was poisoned, and the people with the skills and the money to maybe fix things, they were long gone. The war wasn't some powerful blow that toppled a mighty nation. No, it was just the final gust of wind that knocked over a house of cards. The fragile infrastructure just shattered. The currency became worthless paper.
and massive protests erupted, this time including even the regime's former supporters. And that really is the heart of the story. The war wasn't the cause of Iran's collapse, it was the consequence of it. It's an absolutely powerful, cautionary tale about how internal rot can destroy a nation far more effectively than any outside enemy ever could. And it just reminds us, whether we're looking at a country's GDP or a company's stock price, we always have to ask, what's the real story hidden behind the shiny numbers? What's the actual health of the foundation underneath? Because that, at the end of the day, is the only thing that really matters.